Paul Krugman and Michelle Goldberg, all of them had great columns today. They all write for the Times, of course. Krugman was trying to explain how democracy dies American style. And he wrote about how democracies used to collapse suddenly, tanks rolling towards the presidential palace, people in the streets screaming. You've seen videos of that, usually in some, what Trump would call shithole country, right? But here in the 21st century, as Krugman points out, the process now of democracies collapsing is a lot subtler. And Krugman points out something that you and I have been talking about for quite some time, and that is that authoritarianism, or fascism as I call it, or dictatorships, it's on the rise across the entire world. But it tends to be relatively quiet and gradual, so it's hard to point to a single moment and say, this is the day democracy ended. No, as Krugman writes, you just wake up one morning and you realize it's gone. He quotes from the book that came out last year, How Democracies Die, by two political scientists, Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt. It documented how this process of creeping fascism has played out in many countries, from Putin's Russia to Erdogan's Turkey to Viktor Orban's Hungary. And the way it works, bit by bit, the guardrails of democracy were torn down in these countries, as institutions that were meant to serve the public became tools of the ruling party, and then were weaponized to punish and intimidate that party's opponents. On paper, these countries, Turkey, Hungary, Russia, are still democracies, but not in practice. They have become one-party regimes, authoritarian dictatorships. And the events in the past week, I think you'll agree, have demonstrated how this can happen right here. Krugman writes, at first, Sharpiegate, Trump's inability to admit that he misstated a weather projection, was kind of funny, even though it was also scary. It's not reassuring when the President of the United States can't face reality. But it stopped being any kind of a joke on Friday when NOAA issued a statement falsely backing up Trump's claim that NOAA, had warned about an Alabama threat. Why is this frightening? Because it shows that even the leadership of NOAA, which should be the most technical and apolitical of agencies, is now so subservient to Trump that it's willing not just to overrule its own experts, but to lie, simply to avoid a bit of presidential embarrassment. Think about it. If even weather forecasters are expected to lie for dear leader, the corruption of our institutions is truly complete. Now, there's some more in Krugman's column that you should read from today. Not a whole lot more, but he mentions, as part of its jihad against environmental regulations, Trump has decided to roll back Obama-era rules mandating a gradual rise in fuel efficiency, in our cars and trucks. Now, you think the auto industry would welcome that because they always have in the past, but in fact, automakers have already based their business plans on the assumption that fuel efficiency standards will indeed rise. These are big car companies. They don't like to see their plans upended, in part because they understand that the reality of climate change will eventually force the reinstatement of those rules at some point. Of course, I disagree with that. I think it will be far too late. But according to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's Justice Department is considering bringing an antitrust action against those companies that have decided to go along with the rules instituted by Obama and the state of California now. The Justice Department wants to bring an antitrust action against those companies as if agreeing on environmental standards were a crime comparable to, say, price fixing. I think I've had enough for tonight.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.